Hello everyone, this is Drishti here and I'll be the moderator for today's talk. I hope everyone is healthy and keeping up well with the online mode of communication. TISS Azim Premji School of Education welcomes you all to Conversations. This is the second session of the weekly webinar series on NEP 2020. The topic for today's talk is Language in the National Education Policy 2020. And I'd like to welcome Dr. Ramakant Agnihotri as the esteemed speaker for today's talk. Thank you for being here, sir. Professor Ramakant Agnihotri is presently a professor emeritus at Vidya Bhavan Society. He earlier worked as professor of linguistics in the University of Delhi. He has taught and also published extensively in the areas of applied linguistics, morphology, social linguistics, and research methods. Professor Agnihotri, along with Professor A.L. Khanna, has edited the SAGE series on applied linguistics. Apart from this teaching career, he has lectured at various universities in India and internationally in Germany, UK, USA, Canada, South Africa, Yemen, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan, among the other countries. He has also been working with several NGOs across India in the areas of primary school education. Professor Agnihotri was the chairperson of the National Focus Group on the teaching of Indian languages as part of NCERT-led exercise that resulted in the National Curriculum Framework 2005. On issues of language learning and teaching and teacher training, he has been an advisor, among others, to CBSE, NCERT, SCERTs, and DITS across the country, as also to a large number of NGOs, including Eklavya, Vidya Bhavan Society, and Digantar. He has also been an advisor for the development of MA education program offered at TISS. I request the audience to mute their microphones for better listening, and I further request our speaker, Dr. Agnihotri's permission for beginning the session. May we, sir?
Okay, so shall I begin?
Yes, sir. I would also request all of you or inform all of you that the session is being recorded. Thank you.
Okay, so let me start by thanking the TISS campus of Hyderabad and Professor Rekha Pappu, Yukta Mahatpure, and all the other organizers. My associations with Dada Institute of Social Sciences are very old. And but that's a long story. So I'll try to be brief and try to finish in maybe 35, 40 minutes. Let's see. So you can stop me abruptly, that doesn't matter. You see, the more important thing is that there are more questions and we can have a certain kind of dialogue. The National Education Policy, you see, it does talk briefly about curriculum and also a plan for implementation. We should look at it only as a framework or as a record of future aspirations. As you know, the document itself talks in terms of decades, not in terms of years, and proposes, large-scale changes beginning with early childhood education to higher education. But we will sort of try to ask the question, what is the intent, particularly in the case of language? What is it that is written between the lines? After all, who will quarrel with the governing principles, one of which reads, and I quote from the NEP, that education must develop not only cognitive capacities, both the foundational of literacy and numeracy, and higher order cognitive capacities, such as critical thinking and problem solving, but also social, ethical, and emotional capacity. I mean, In fact, I think if one can ensure just critical thinking, that should do the trick. That's enough. So let us see what it actually does. In fact, I'd like to start with a question which I thought with which I'll end. So I'd like all of you to think whether the contemporary socio-political environment around you allows any space for critical, rational thinking and inquiry. So do think about it. What I propose to do is to restrict myself to, the questions of early childhood education and language in school, and issues of language and knowledge actually in school, and maybe a little bit in higher education. Let me summarize what I'll say. Briefly, I suggest that we continue nourishing the received wisdom about mother tongue, three-language formula, Hindi, English, and multilingualism. We keep repeating them, year after year, policy after policy, because I think it is convenient to sustain the tradition rather than call its bluff. We do not ask relevant questions, we do not address the core issues. For example, no document recognizes the fact that children actually arrive in schools as socio-linguistic adults with a verbal repertoire, which I will start calling multilinguality, not just a language. And hence all policy and all curricular documents should be predicated on that one single fact, which should be obvious, but it seems it is not. So I think we need to ask difficult questions, particularly when we know that in spite of high enrollment, increasingly high number of students drop out of school. Probably most of you will know that only 50% of children, 50% of students are left in class 10 out of the 100 who have joined in class 1. So, and in addition to poverty, I know, and the increasing government withdrawal from education, one major reason for this dropout, as most of you will appreciate, is the use of languages which students just don't comprehend, and extremely high levels of silence, and therefore insults to their languages in the classroom. So this is the sort of scenario. As compared to other policy documents, NEP 2020 is par excellence in rhetoric. You just can't match it. However, it hides much more than it reveals. In fact, if you say, oh, look, but this is what we should have, the policy can certainly turn around and say, oh, look here, this is exactly what we say. You will find it all the way in the policy. Our constitutional mandate, and I quote from the Constitution, is to secure to all its citizens. If you just look at this small little phrase, all its citizens. So there is no question of inclusion now. There is no question of exclusion. There is no question of we and them. There is no question of othering. We want it for all the citizens. Among other things, the Constitution says we should have equality of status and opportunity, and liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship. So this is, I'm just quoting from the preamble. And indeed, the rhetoric of NEP 2020, among its governing principles and in the text, the policy several times mentions things like liberty, pluralism, equality, justice. Of course, it gets rid of both socialism and secularism. But if that is really so, why do we need such a high degree of centralization and monitoring to make everything digitized, tracked, and homogenized? It was only the Kothari Commission 64-66 that crafted a policy in a social matrix and recommended education for all citizens. Now, mind you, for all citizens in comparable schools. The policies of 1968, 86, 2020 have only eroded that social matrix and increasingly maximized the gulf between the privileged and the marginalized. According to NEP, it is clear which sections of society will go where and will occupy what spaces of power. Nobody can miss that if you read the document carefully. The essence of education should be autonomy at all levels, and that is not what the policy visualizes. It's sort of clear in the policy that what will the future hierarchy look like if it is implemented. There will be different kinds of institutions, some peripheral, giving certificates and diplomas, others doing high-end research, some doing only teaching, some doing only research, and some doing maybe both. How can teaching be so starkly separated from research? It really fails my imagination. We thought they always go together. There will be different kinds of institution and different kinds of certifications and different kinds of exit points. It is transparently clear who will eventually go where. Those on the margins will stay where they are. Those at the top will further consolidate their positions. Again, if you wish to provide autonomy, and the policy says that again and again, why have so many centralized, homogenized accrediting agencies, more than 10 or 12, which are mentioned in the policy, like the NRF, National Research Foundation, and you can't even figure out these acronyms or abbreviations. NCVET, which is National Council for Vocational Education and Training, NETF, National Education Technology, NHERC, NTA, National Testing Agencies, NPST, National Professional Standards for Teachers. And then it will have PARAKH, it will be Performance Assessment Review, etc. You can check all these. You see, it needs to be appreciated that increasing digitization, commercialization, centralization, and homogenization of education will exactly be inversely proportionate to the real construction of knowledge. We all know the API story of giving marks for every job. You produce junk papers and junk research. But you see, you need to read NEP carefully to see how the government wants to track everything now. In order to comment on the issues of ECC and mother tongue education, three-language formula, multilingualism, critical inquiry and construction of knowledge, we need to ask, what do we really mean when we say language? What is the nature of this phenomenon? Most people, including scholars, think of language in terms of a language, not even realizing how pointless it can be. Consider, for example, Bodo people and Bodo language, Santhal people and Santhal language. I mean, does it mean then that Bodos don't speak Assamese or Hindi or English? Aren't they a part of their repertoire, or the Santhal? On the other hand, when we say Hindi, what do we mean? Where is Hindi spoken? Who are the people to whom Hindi belongs? And similarly about English. Whose language is English? So we need to keep all these things in mind. There are, I don't deny it, there are indeed areas where the concept of a language is important, such as for people like us, linguists, for whom it is bread and butter, okay? It is important for politicians who want new states and power, they want to become chief ministers, and the Sahitya Academy wants to give awards, and of course, people need it as an identity marker sometimes. And, linguists want to write grammars because, they then want a dictionary and they want to write a set of rules which will combine the dictionary with the grammar and produce that slice of language. Okay. Given this understanding of language, we define multilingualism also in an additive way as L1 plus L2 plus L3, which is not at all which is what is the understanding, contemporary understanding of multilingualism or multilinguality. When we think of language, we do need to think in terms of a continuum. one end of which is highly systematic and codified in probably Paninian or Chomskyan terms, and on the other hand, we really use it in our day-to-day life is highly fluid, and that is porous. The choices available to a language user in her total verbal repertoire or in her multilinguality, linguistic fluidity rather than standardization and codification define languages. And code mixing, translation, code switching, and translanguaging are the features which are predominant on the other end. Secondly, you need to keep in mind that linguistic diversity and variability in linguistic behavior is an inherent feature of all social groups at each level: family, neighborhood, school, classroom. As some of you, probably most of you would recollect, Professor Pandit used to say that this variability is a facilitator and not an obstacle in communication. Sounds, words, phrases, sentences, they don't need passports and visas. I've said this very often, to travel to other languages. You think of various titles and various ads, something like Dil Mange More. What language is that? Or a film called Jab We Met. What is that? Or something we will commonly say, Mera bhai kaam karta hai and my father too. Where is that Hindi? Is that English? Where does that my father too belongs? I could also say my father bhi. Well, I want you to think about these things. Or consider a child who is ready to come to school, growing up in an environment consisting of, let us say, Hadoti, Mewari, Assamese, Hindi, and English, and this is an actual example, and several other languages around that child, playing Antakshari. This is an actual recent report. Playing Antakshari with his mother, and the mother starts saying, okay, kabutar, and the son says rat. Sorry, the son says rat, not rat. From kabutar, gets rat. And, the mother says tomato, the son says run. Look at the fluidity. Mother says null, okay? And the son says ladki, right? And you get ki, so mother say keel, ends in a la, and the son says late. And then instantly he says, oh mama, but there are two lates. एक तो वो वाला लेट जो मैं स्कूल को लेट हो जाता हूँ, और दूसरा जब मैं लेट जाता हूँ. Now you see, where is English, where is Hindi, where is the concept of a language? This is language at its most fluid, but this is what real stuff is. And this is what with which children come to schools. Instead of talking of a mother tongue of the child, we should talk of her multilinguality, her verbal repertoire developed at home. That is why I think the whole idea of ECCE, at least to me, is not very healthy. By all means, supply additional nourishment to children. But why do we need to do it in the formal structure of a school? By all means, have some kinds of day centers, where children could play and so on. But NEP, mind you, proposes to track the child from the moment she is born till the time she is ready to vote. You can see NEP and see that I am not making it up. From age 0 to 3, and from 3 to 5, NCERT will be asked the day it is passed by the parliament, but NCERT is, I'm sure, already at the job. So a curriculum has to be made for children from 0 to 3 and from 3 to 5. The issue really is whether from a linguistic, cognitive, and cultural point of view, we really need a formal, this kind of formal early childhood education. Parents and the extended family may wish to be with their children, when they are young. 0 to 5, if they can afford to. This is the period in which a child's linguistic, cognitive, and cultural development takes place in a loving, warm, caring ambience of home and extended family and the neighborhood and the street. National, this policy does talk about apnapan, but where will you get this apnapan? In the ECC centers? You will not. It can be subsumed only in the ambience of the home or the neighborhood. The system's variability and fluidity of the multiplicity of languages a child encounters during this period are internalized. It is in this environment that a child, for example, learns whether to use tu, tum, or aap in a given situation. That's a socio-linguistic learning. That's not just linguistic learning. And what kind of linguistic changes, syntactically will take place in the subject verb agreement when you use tu, tum, tu chal, tum chalo, aap chaliye, etc. The complexity of orality internalized at home should not be underestimated. This is a sensitive period of the growth and development of multilinguality, which requires an interface between the universal grammar and the caring and warm atmosphere of family and the neighborhood. No formal structure can be a substitute for it. I also raise this issue because no country worth its salt, whichever you can talk. Japan, you don't like. China, you hate China, because China and Chinese are deleted from the national education policy suddenly. I mean, if you're fighting Chinese, you're not fighting the Chinese language and culture. Or Finland, Russia, Canada, Norway, USA, Germany, you name it, any country. They don't send kids to formal school before the age of 6 or 7. Do we just want to create spaces for the multiplication of substandard roadside English medium nurseries? Is that the project? Or is it the project that for the elite, you will outsource to the corporates the whole sector of nurseries? It's for you to think about. The discourse on mother tongue education is really old, much, much older than the UNESCO Declaration of 1953. Everybody talks of UNESCO Declaration of 1953. But I think it's a matter of common sense. Even in India, it goes back at least to 1821 to the Bombay Presidency Note and has been raised in several subsequent policy documents. But nobody raises the real issue that what do you mean by mother tongue? That issue is not raised. And when you live in a country with 1,652 languages, you don't want to raise that issue. But this is a complex issue if you don't appreciate the true nature of language. The mother tongue in the national education policy is accompanied by such apologetic expressions as preferably, or wherever possible. And thereafter, home language / local language / regional language, they could have said / global language, shall continue to be taught as a language wherever possible. Given the diversity of languages in India and the socio-political pressures for English, Hindi, and Sanskrit, it is not surprising that no policy has really been able to sort out the mother tongue issue. Why can't multilinguality be the basis of our education and language policies evolve bottoms up rather than top down? I really want all of you to think about this. How about a district or a block getting together and evolve a language policy for its students? I think it's eminently possible. Of course, the teachers will have to be trained in multilinguality and its pedagogy. It has now been widely demonstrated across the world, close home in pockets of Kerala and Rajasthan, and far away in South Africa, Ethiopia, Australia, and many other places, that multilinguality can really be a pedagogical, theoretical, cognitive and creative resource. The issue is simple. and has been stated again and again, at least in my work and the work of several of my colleagues now. Let us disengage ourselves from the pursuit of correctness and of a language. Learners understand formal concepts best through their languages while talking to their friends. You explain things to them in their languages, they will understand even highly abstract concepts and allow them to talk to their friends. But you need to remember that they don't just have a language or a mother tongue, but they come with a fluid repertoire. The nature of education. You see, anybody who thinks that there is a monolingual classroom needs to go back to her classroom and find out the truth. The nature of education will change radically if we accept the fundamental fact that no classes are monolingual, and that it is important that the voice of every child finds a space in the classroom. Note that the issue of language is important because the transmission and construction of knowledge will happen through languages, and the acquisition of critical inquiry subsumes control over higher order academic proficiency in languages. I'll try to show how multilinguality, rather than a mother tongue in a classroom, can be used as a resource for achieving these objectives. We may now turn to our good old friend, the three-language formula, whose history goes back at least to 1949, Radhakrishnan University Grants Education Commission, where the target was, being very scholarly in different languages, and to the 1968 Kothari Commission. Now, people forget that this was a consensus between the chief ministers of South India and North India. Northeast doesn't exist for people, even today. Northeast is not there. The remote corners of West are also not there. So the consensus was, look, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Okay. So we will put up a policy which says that in the Hindi heartland, God knows where to draw its borders now. In the Hindi heartland, people will learn Tamil or Telugu. And in South India, people will learn Hindi. They said, yes, none of this will happen. They said, no, but it's a good idea to put it in paper. So everybody will learn Hindi and English, but in South, people will additionally learn Hindi, and in the North, people will learn additionally a South Indian language like Tamil. As you know, it's 60 years. Nothing has happened. It has not happened. But nobody wants to call that bluff. Nobody wants to get rid of the three-language formula, which has not worked at all. So I think, all of you need to, for example, the policy says that in particular students who wish to change one or more of the three languages they are studying may do so in grade 6 or 7, when they can show high levels of proficiency in at least 2, and one of them must be Indian, and then Sanskrit will be offered at all levels. Sanskrit will be offered from early childhood education to the doctoral level. I don't know why. So three-language formula, a disaster with a long history of over 50 years, has been, what is the expression? Yeah, flogged like a dead horse. In any case, nobody should worry about the dominating future of English. That is here to stay. ECCE will provide a platform for mushrooming of the so-called English medium nurseries and Anganwadis, and dissemination of Hindi is a constitutional responsibility. So that is the scenario. Finally, let us turn to multilinguality as a classroom resource. NEP abounds in highly unscientific proposals. It talks of multilingualism again and again, but I think it is patently unscientific and irrational about the kinds of claims it makes, not once, but several times. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Shall I continue?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, 10 minutes more and then we'll move to question answer session. Shall I
Yeah,
remind you before?
I'll take just another 4 or 5 minutes,
Okay,
3
sir.
4 minutes, and then I'll stop. Okay. I said I'll finish in 30 minutes. That's what I'm trying to do. 32 minutes. Okay. So the policy says that India's languages are among the richest, most scientific, most beautiful, most expressive in the world. As if, you know, my language Punjabi or your language Santhali or Bangla is not beautiful, is not rich. Huh? And it again says Sanskrit, while also an important modern language mentioned in the 8th schedule of the Constitution, possesses a classical literature that is greater in volume than that of Latin and Greek put together. Right? And I'm reminded of Macaulay's, you know, single shelf statement. The policy also suggests, contrary to all contemporary research, that children pick up languages extremely quickly between the ages of 2 and 8. You know, that's the foundation of the policy, which is patently wrong. In fact, adults now, it is proved, learns languages better, except the, you know, the sound part of it, except the. Finally, I'll take 2-3 minutes to talk about how multilinguality can be used as a resource. I am saying that we should use the languages available in the classroom as database, elicit that from the students, take them through a process of data collection, classification, categorization, and rule formation, on the basis of which they build a hypothesis which they can test again. You see, it is no use to tell them that the angles of a triangle is 180 degrees, or that the earth is round, or that we make plurals in English by adding SES or IES. You see, all students come with cognitive and linguistic knowledge and a multiplicity of cognitive and linguistic knowledge to the classroom. Let us make that as the base and move forward. Okay, thank you very much. Now wait for the questions.
Yes, so there are certain questions in the chat box. I am just addressing the names so that they can speak their questions. Bhau Gawande, can you go ahead with the question? Hello?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, sir, you may proceed with the question.
There is
Hello,
people
sir. Hello,
in
sir.
the waiting room. Huh?
Hello,
Yeah,
sir. Good evening.
hello.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Policy nowhere mentions the term secularism. A final
Yes,
policy, nowhere.
yes.
How it can be achieved? That is my question.
Yeah, I said that. I said that, you know, you see, I mean, even in the Constitution, the word secular was added later on, right? It was an amendment to the preamble of the Constitution, both socialist and secular. So it is very convenient. You see, you should never forget the brute majority that the party, you know, the ruling party has at the moment, right? So I'm sure they will get rid of the word, both these words from the preamble of the Constitution. Both the socialist and we are no longer secular anyway. We are no longer socialist or even democratic.
Sir, it seems so.
Yeah.
Does it really provide space for critical thinking when it says old Indian knowledge was superior and best in the world?
Yes. You see, the point is, I have no quarrel with our ancient knowledge. I'm sure, you know, like all other civilizations and cultures, we have very precious knowledge. My problem is that knowledge needs to be critically examined, you know, like all other knowledge. That nobody is doing. So even today, if I want to know something worthwhile about Sanskrit language, I have to go to America or to Germany. I'm sure there are some pundits here who know, but as a formal discipline, it's not there. you just don't, it's not enough to say that we are great people. You need to show rationally and critically that we are great people. Yeah.
Policy also proposes home language of a child. How
Yes.
and who will choose it?
Who?
Will choose it? Which
No, you
language?
see, I tried to tell you, I mean, aren't there other people asking questions, or these are questions from different people?
From one person, sir. I was switching to address, but sir interrupted. So, shall I go to the next one? Ekta Singla. Ma'am, would you like to address a question?
Sure. Professor Agnihotri, if you would want to answer the previous question, I can also wait, but I can go ahead with mine.
Yeah, what was the previous question? Home language, yes. You see, I was continuously talking about that there is nothing called a home language. I mean, all of you think about your homes. All of you think about your, neighborhood. I mean, different varieties are spoken there, maybe the differences are not very stark, but the differences are there, the variability is there. So we need to recognize that rather than talk from the very beginning to talk of a mother tongue. That is why the mess, That is why the mess, because you talk of 3 language formula in terms of 3 languages. We don't want that. It's not worthwhile. We should get rid of that. Yeah, Drishti.
Okay. Ekta ma'am?
Yeah, thanks, Drishti. Yes. So, Professor Agnihotri, first of all, thank you for not mincing words when talking about the language policy in the country. I think we do need more honest accounts of what's happening. So, thanks for that. In terms of the question, I wanted your opinion or your suggestions on the fact that when we talk about multilinguality and especially working with children growing up in such multilingual environments, what does it mean for research with children in terms of understanding how they are learning languages? Because usually the case is that one would define in a research design the home language or the mother tongue and then go about talking about other influences. But if we are talking about a multilinguality where you're defining it in a more functional terms, what does it entail for research design and what are the things that one needs to account for?
Yeah, thank you, Ekta, for raising that issue. You see, the first thing is you can begin to do research. I mean, if you're talking of research in terms of implementation of the ideas, in terms of pedagogical practices, then the first step is to train teachers. You see, we don't have teachers who recognize. You see, what is the standard pedagogical paradigm? The standard pedagogical paradigm, and which is also, a theoretical paradigm in terms of, because that is the way it is taught, that you can have classroom transactions if you only in terms of a teacher, right? A classroom, a textbook, and a language. That's it. We are not even, when I tell my colleagues and when I tell students with whom I work in the, teacher training workshops or, capacity building workshops, when I tell them that, you have your classes are multilingual, they say, no, sir. Our class is only Hindi speaking. And you see, then I give them an assignment, and the following day they come with a chart which is full of no less than 25 to 30 languages. So, I mean, you need to think about this. So once at least that is accepted, that is recognized, okay, then we can say, okay, what the pedagogy is going to look like. Okay, let me explain one part of it. Now, people say, oh, that means the teacher has to know all the languages. For God's sake, no. My answer to your question is, do students play in the playground or not after the class? Do they talk to each other or they don't? Obviously they do. So they know how to talk to each other. The moment the multilinguality processes begin in the classroom, the place of the teacher is not in the front. The place of the teacher is at the back. It is the students who come to the front. I mean, they recite a poem. Somebody will translate that poem into Hindi. Another student will translate it into English. Okay. And then a whole lot of, linguistic and cognitive things will happen. I could go on and on about this, I mean, if you have the time, I can conduct a workshop right here now and show you how it works. That is how the 91-92 workshop in South Africa was done. Because when I was talking like this, people said, no, this is not possible in a classroom. There are 200 people. I said, if I do it with you, then will you trust me? So they had no time, they were project, but then they found the time. They gave me 1 hour. I showed it to them that yes, it is possible to privilege. You need to have the confidence that we must privilege the languages of our students in the classroom. You don't care if students don't understand your languages. You think that's fine. You don't want to listen to the students who you are teaching. So does that answer your question?
I think probably a little more elaboration would help, but I'll contact you personally, I think, not take more time of yours.
No. You see, the point is, Ekta, no. I think once that is established, then if you are thinking of doing research theoretical in multilinguality, yes, then we need to talk about that differently. But because most people are suspicious about the potential of implementing multilinguality as a pedagogical device.
I think it's more the earlier point, so yeah.
Okay. I can only send you some papers and then we can talk.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we have Richa Prasad, ma'am. Richa Prasad. So, sir, shall I read the question?
Yes.
How do you visualize shift of language learning approach from literature to functional literacy?
You see, why should people have functional literacy? Why should we just stop thinking at functional literacy? Because, there are exit points. Some people will just be shown the door after functional literacy. Why? Our aim should be that every student achieves high levels of cognitive literacy, academic literacy, so that critical inquiry is possible. Otherwise, critical inquiry is not possible. I think, whether functional literacy or, high order literacy, we do need to root it in multilinguality of our students. And it can be done. Or in their other knowledge systems. I'm not just saying linguistic knowledge systems. I am saying other knowledge systems. Every child comes with a theory of the earth. Every child comes with a theory of night and day, for example. Ask them, how is it dark and how does it rain? If you ask 3 different children, they'll give you different kinds of answers. Bring that center stage. Yeah.
Okay, sir, then there's a message which says that usually we find the students good in languages that are not interested in making a career in language. That's how language skills gets a low priority. So do you want to give your views on that?
Well, can I repeat my question? I'm Richa.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know. Earlier when we have 68 policy or 86 policy, the focus was completely on literature-based approach, and we were giving a good number of literature to the students. But the new education policy and the classroom approach is now limited to phonics, and the literature that we are reading is not actually literature. They are just prose or paragraphs, or a very functional kind of literacy approaches there. So how do you see this shift, sir? Because the students in my age or in my time, we learned English through reading literature, sir, vivid literature. So how do you see this shift, sir?
You see, I do not subscribe to this divide between language and literature. People sort of start talking as if, literature is not written in language, or as if language has nothing to do with literature. It is the increasing commercialization and commodification of language. You see, do you know that ELT is an industry? I don't know how many people here, I mean, of course, my senior colleagues do understand, but ELT, we are told, is a greater industry than the steel industry in the world. So people have interests in dissociating language from literature because they want to teach functional kind of literacy. Okay, so you had that whole business. You see, that is why the methods keep changing. Right? Translation method, grammar translation method, then you had the communicative method. So what was the teaching? Hello, how are you? How do you go to the airport, and how do you buy a ticket? And how do you make tea? Or making recipes, or things like that. I think that is not language. That is neither language nor literature. It doesn't teach you anything. So I think that was the right practice, that all language, most of language, all grammatical aspects were learned through the study of literature. And the good departments across the world will even today teach literature as literature and its linguistic aspects, and good departments of linguistics will have a section on stylistics, which is the study of the language of literature. So I mean, it's unfortunate. I would only say, unless somebody wants to add something, I think it is unfortunate.
So Ritesh sir wants to ask a question. Sir,
Who?
Ritesh sir.
Yeah.
Ritesh.
Yes.
Sir,
Hello.
please go ahead.
Yes,
Hello,
Ritesh.
Professor Ramakant. This is
Yes.
Ritesh
Yes.
from TIS, Hyderabad. I understand the salience that you are trying to foreground of the context and the lively cognitive engagement of the child with the language. But at the same time, I was thinking about syntactics and whether how do we bring about our children to appreciate the idea of structure and connect it with the kind of cognitive engagement that you have been referring to. I just would like to have your opinion on that particular part.
First of all, do you think this is a yes/no question? So you can just say yes or no. Do you think that classical languages like Greek, Latin, and Sanskrit, and standard languages like let's say Marathi, Gujarati, Bangla, Hindi, they have structure and they have syntactic rules. But yeah, let me finish. But not the others.
No.
Yes
I
or no?
No.
No. Okay, fine. Once you say that, you are already halfway home. You see, if you agree that all students come as linguistic adults in class 1, they already know the syntax of the language. Okay, we now need to, if you think it is necessary, I am thinking of introducing them to syntax as a sort of window to scientific inquiry, not for teaching grammar. I don't want to teach them grammar because I know that you or a 2-year-old baby has the linguistic faculty to learn languages without being taught any grammar. You see, it is impossible for a family, it is impossible for parents to teach any grammar, or for any teacher to teach any grammar, because they don't know any grammar. You see, any teacher who says that plurals are made by adding SES or ES. For example, I don't know how many teachers of English can really tell us that if you say she walks slowly, okay, so what is that sir doing in walks grammatically? I don't know how much you know, Ritesh.
No,
No,
think
no,
we
it doesn't
first latch
matter.
on to
Doesn't
that.
matter. What I'm saying is the child knows in the sense that she subconsciously knows. Okay, not consciously, but subconsciously. She doesn't know in the sense of know, that she can't tell us, but she knows, she internalizes such rules. So I want to take it forward for 2 or 3 things. One, to provide a space to the language of every child. Number 2, to introduce them to scientific inquiry. Number 3, to break all linguistic stereotypes, that all languages are rule governed and all languages are fluid. You see, this is a difficult concept to internalize. You just have to think. Let me give you a simple example. I don't know how much time we have. Let me give you a simple example like, let us say, मेरा भाई रोज साइकिल से स्कूल जाता है, right? That's a simple Hindi sentence. Is that right?
Right.
Do you agree?
Yes.
Are you a Hindi speaker, Ritesh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, why do you call it a Hindi sentence?
I think it communicates the message, and it
I am saying
relates to.
grammatically. I am saying from the point of view of words and syntax, because that is what you started talking about.
Right. Yeah.
You see, it will be very difficult. So let us, because other people may like to ask questions, you can go home and find out. It will be very difficult to prove that lexically it's a sentence of Hindi. Okay, because, bhai comes from bhrata, which is Sanskrit, school comes from English, right? Cycle comes from Japanese or Chinese, and so on and so forth. So no language has words of her own. They have to come from somewhere or the other. Okay. Right.
So we have
Thank you, sir.
Vishnu sir, Rekha ma'am, and Ashok sir. You all can ask your question one by one. Anyone can go ahead. Vishnu sir, I think.
Can I just ask Drishti? Can I ask,
Yes,
because I may
ma'am.
have to leave my IGNOU premises and then I will become unconnected.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Rama, for your brilliant, scintillating, thought-provoking speech as usual. So there was one statement which I thought I wanted a bit of a clarification. I think you said that now it is known that adults learn languages faster than children. So I thought it was the other way around, and it was children who could learn as many languages, when they are young, spontaneously, just by the fact of being exposed to them. So could you
Yes,
sort of
Rekha.
yeah.
First of all, good to at least hear your voice. I thought I'll see your picture. And thank you for coming and being a part.
Okay, so here am I. For whatever
Being a
it is.
part. Yes, hi. For a long time, all of us believed and preached and, taught that children learn languages very fast. And, this seems true in the sense that when children grow up in a multilingual environment, for them, let us say 4 languages are around. Okay. Then, they pick up all the 4 with equal felicity. Okay. Now, the issue is that does not mean that the adults cannot. Right? The language faculty which is actually responsible for the learning of human languages, now it is very clearly shown, stays with us all our life. Okay, unless we get cognitively damaged. Otherwise, it stays with me. Our cognitive capacity has increased. I will be quicker at picking up words and making their relationships. I'll be quicker at, picking up grammar. I'll be quicker at, yes. One thing we do not learn after the age of 14 or 15, certainly not, is the pronunciation part. You see, I can speak English and anybody can recognize that I speak Indian English because my tongue doesn't come out, or my lips, when I say with, my lips don't round, okay? Or when I say this, my tongue doesn't come out. Because by the time you're an adult, your jaw is fixed to certain habits, okay, of opening and closing and rounding. So far phonology is concerned, so far pronunciation is concerned, you're right. Okay, children are far better with that plasticity of jaw. But it is only the plasticity of jaw, it's not the plasticity of the human brain. That's the point I want to make. So it is well known now that adults are as good language learners as anybody else.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks. Yeah.
Others, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello.
I think, yes.
Hello. Yeah.
Hi.
Vishnu here.
Yeah.
So my question is connected to the language and knowledge construction, especially in terms of what ideological position NEP is actually, making. So as you rightly pointed out, yes, the ruling political parties' ideologies are not actually for the knowledge construction, because one of their ideological document talks that the language, for example, the mother tongue itself, their argument is this: actually, if the education is for transmission of knowledge from one generation to the other generation, we should taught things in mother tongue. So the idea of knowledge for them is very clear. So my question to you is actually how actually multilingualism is actually enrich the cognitive capacity of critical thinking or construction of knowledge, or a single language is actually going to stop it or restricting it. So yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, Vishnu, thank you for asking. I think very, very intelligent question. You see, the theoretical question to internalize is that there is nothing called a language. This is the issue. Even if the most standardized form of Sanskrit or most standardized form of English, I mean, it is not a language. There is a high amount of fluidity in those languages, right? When Sanskrit was reigning supreme, there were hundreds of varieties of Sanskrit around. And even today, as you know, there are hundreds of varieties of English. And there are, you see, when I ask people, maybe if you are a Hindi speaker or anyone sitting here, if you could tell me where standard Hindi is spoken, where is standard Hindi spoken? Or for that matter, where is standard English spoken?
Yes.
You see, these are painful questions, but we need to think about them. And once we accept that, once we understand this and appreciate the significance of this question, then we are home for all the questions you have raised, very sensitive, very critical issues that you have raised, that yes, we can use multilinguality for critical inquiry. We can use multilinguality for building up academic levels of language proficiency. Because what does the kind of thing that I am saying, what does it do? It makes you ask questions. and it forces you to give rational answers and build your logic step by step by step. And that is what critical inquiry is, right? And it will build up from class 4 to class, for graduation to doctoral work. It will build up. But the principle is in place. So I fully agree with you. You cannot have any knowledge transmission without language. In fact, which should be done critically. You cannot have any knowledge production without language, and that should also be done highly critically. And that critical method can be, can be strengthened through multilinguality.
Thank you.
Yeah, next. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Right.
Questions.
Sir, I wanted to ask a question. So you spoke of districts designing their own systems in regard to like the languages that should be employed for teaching. Is that right? Is that what you meant?
Yes. No, I basically meant that there should be, you see, the whole policy is a document in homogenization and centralization. It keeps talking about autonomy, but if you read it carefully, it is increasing digitization, commercialization, commodification, and globalization. Okay, we want to become, Harvards and Princetons. Now, who will go to Harvards and Princeton? Do you think a manual worker? Will he reach there? No, he will get an exit point after class 10. Yeah, sorry, Anushka, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. When you said that, did you also mean that we should maybe not have a larger system, like not have the NEP, which gives everyone a basic idea of where to go with it, which can give the states a basic idea of where they should go with this planning that you're suggesting that every district is capable of? Would not having this homogenized system that you speak of, would that not make it easier for people moving not just across states but across countries, because of the number of languages that are in this country and the culture?
Yeah. Okay, Anushka, I understand. I understand what you're saying. You see, the issue is now. Let us say, what should I say? Let us say an Ao, Angami. Do you know these languages, Ao or Angami? Or
no, sir.
Huh? No. Do you know the names? Do you know the names?
Yeah.
Or let us say even some Khasi or Munda languages. Now, and suppose such a person becomes a senior functionary in the government of India, in the central government. How many languages do you think she will have learned by the time she gets there?
3.
Anushka, she would have learned at least 5 or 6. She would have learned 4 or 5 anyway in childhood, but she will have to learn with a fairly high level of proficiency at least 4 or 5 languages. Why on earth we should talk of 3-language formula? See, we don't think of those people, that they have to first learn Bodo, then they have to learn Assamese, then they have to learn Hindi, then they have to learn English, then they will now learn Sanskrit. I mean, why? Let the whole community plan. I am not saying they should not have the national and international perspective in mind. Of course they will have. But they will keep the languages of their own community at the heart of the whole project. And they will learn Hindi and they will learn English.
Right, but sir, if someone's moving there and they don't speak that language and all of the teaching is happening in that regional language, how are they supposed to cope with it?
Sorry?
If, for example, take any state, like take Bengal or take Kashmir, someone's moving there from either a predominantly Hindi speaking state or something like that, how are they supposed to then adjust with like this huge change of language if the instruction is happening in their regional language?
Well, if they're going to school, they will learn. This happens everywhere. It happens again and again. If they are adults, then you should think of millions of migrants who travel, go abroad, and manage to learn.
So they usually have a basic understanding of, at the very least, English, and that's kind of treated as like the global
No,
language.
people, millions of manual labor that has gone all over Canada, America, and England and Europe. They knew no English at all.
Yes, so by that example, like also like a lot of us have moved from like North States to Hyderabad, so we don't really speak that language. So that's not the issue. But when you have to learn in that language, when you have to understand concepts that are not very easy for you to understand that in a language that again you don't know, that I think proves to be like a huge challenge for a lot of people.
That's precisely what I was saying. That Anushka, it is the responsibility of the school to make sure that you understand. To find a teacher who will make you understand in the languages that you know, and gradually you learn the languages of the area if you are going to stay there longer.
Right, but sir, do you believe it's possible 100% of the time for the school to be able to accommodate that? Because of the number of languages that are in this country.
If you asking me whether there are such schools in the world, there are.
I'm not asking about the exceptions. I'm asking whether it can be applicable on like a
it is your constitutional right. You have a right. It's a question of asking that right strongly enough. That's all I'm saying.
Okay,
that if you have 5 or 6 students in a school speaking some language, provisions are made for that language. You see, we need to, the bottom line is we need to respect the languages that students bring to school.
I was wondering, Ramakant, whether the questions also understood question is coming from what happens at the higher education level. So,
can't hear you. Rekha, can't hear you. Sorry.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Now it sounds a bit muffled.
Louder, please.
Ma'am, you can take the lid off the speaker that you were using from the computer.
Sorry, I'll come back later.
Oh, now I can hear you. Yeah. Now I can hear you.
I think she said she will come back later, so we can have another question and then we can have ma'am.
Okay.
Ashok sir wanted to ask a question. Ashok sir? Ashok Katukade sir. If anyone else wants to go with their question, can go ahead. Ashok sir, yes.
Oh. Yeah.
Some problem.
Can I be heard?
I can't hear you.
You're not audible.
If it is possible for you, Ashok sir, can you type your question in the chat box?
Yeah, I have the question. I have the question. I'll go ahead with the question.
I have typed.
Yes, I am taking
Yeah,
it.
please.
So he has asked, does really the language proficiency matter in career of a student?
Sorry, can you repeat that, because I can't find it in the chat. Huh?
Does the language proficiency matter in the career of a student?
Oh yes. Oh yes, it matters. It matters. It matters for everything, not just career of the student, but it matters for everything. That's what we mean by higher levels of cognitive proficiency. That you should have. You should have, high levels of proficiency. No question.
Hey, sir, what I wanted to say was, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yes.
Hello.
Yeah.
You can hear me. So what I wanted to say was, see that what happens to the student in the school, what I've seen is that they don't bother about the languages provision in the sense, they just get the pass kind of marks in the languages. And generally, whatever they want to do in the higher courses, like say they do the further degree or postgraduate and all that, then they'll only see to it that they know enough English to take up the courses that they want. And they don't bother about the language at all throughout the life, if you ask me.
Yes.
So if I'm not proficient in any languages, I still can make a better career. And if I see I do interact with the students, and the languages as such are horrible, but these guys are brilliant of the lot in the India.
Yeah. Yeah, Ashok ji, I understand. I understand what you're saying. It is just that, you know, do you think it is worthwhile asking why is it so? I mean, are there?
We'll come to that. Once we come to that,
I am saying,
fact, and then we come to why.
Ashok, I'm saying, who is responsible? Are they responsible?
No. See, that is all further question. What I'm asking is basic of a language influencing the national education policy. If language is that important, then the policy enough importance. Say,
I can't hear you. Sorry.
So your voice is breaking.
Yeah, I can't hear you at all.
Language.
So you can type it in the chat box.
Can I come in now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. I was saying that what I found striking also about the NEP was that while it speaks about multilinguality for school education, when it comes to higher education, it talks of bilinguality. So, I mean, also with this whole thing about translation, a lot of material being translated. So one of the questions that I was wondering whether Anushka's concern or even Mr. Ashok's concern about proficiency in the language and career in particular, how does that figure at higher education? What language in higher education, the fact that somebody is...
Yeah, you see
I may have to mute you, Mr. Ashok, because we can't hear you. Yeah.
Rekha,
yes.
You see the...
can you hear me now?
Just wait, please. I'm talking to Rekha, then we'll come to you. I'm trying to answer her question. You see, the policy says that higher education will be given in regional languages also. Okay, it says again and again, and and in that sense, it talks of multilingualism. Okay, or bilingualism in the it doesn't talk of multilingualism. This is the problem. As I said, you know that even when you are in a school, we will say, okay, you are teaching English poem, you can use a little bit Hindi. What about, you know, for example, if you're in Rajasthan, what about Mewari, Marwadi, Gujarati, you know, Bagadi? What about all those students? I mean, at least make an effort. Do only one poem in a week, but make sure that all the students understand. And a lot of linguistic activity takes place in the classroom. And I have done it. I am saying this because we have conducted several experiments. Similar thing is possible at higher education level also. You can split the topics, you can split the chapters, and you can give spaces to different languages. I think it is eminently possible. Once again, you will say, oh, then the teacher has to know so many languages. No, teacher doesn't have to know so many languages. It will be a great task that suppose an assignment is done in Hindi and you know only English. Let us say you want the assignment only in English. Then one of your bilingual students translates that into English. She stands to learn, the person whose assignment has been translated stands to learn, and the whole class stands to learn, and the language proficiency gets enhanced. And languages get privileged, languages of the students get privileged. So I think, and again, using multilinguality for critical inquiry and for, focusing on the sound, word, and sentence structure of language, of different languages represented in the class, once again, you can go to higher and higher levels in the area of critical inquiry. Eminently possible.
Muskan? Muskan, ma'am, you can go ahead with the question.
Hello, sir. This is Muskan. I want to know that, do you think availability of options for students to choose from one of the regional languages of a specific region?
A bit louder, and can you sort of, can you adjust your laptop or something? Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, sir. I was asking, do you think that availability of options for students to choose from one of the regional languages of a specific region in schools of North Indian Hindi-speaking states should be focused more over learning Sanskrit as a third language?
Yes. You see, I don't know whether you know this or not. I mean, Sanskrit has been offered as the third language for 50 years now.
Yes.
And nobody learns Sanskrit.
Yes, nobody learns.
This country, we as a people, we should be ashamed of ourselves. Because, the whole policy is wrong. You tell me, why should a Tamilian learn Hindi? Why? There is no instrumental reason. You're not going to get a job. There is no integrative, no South Indian, sees herself, certainly not a part of Tamil Nadu or Kerala, see themselves as a part of Uttar Pradesh. No, they don't. They have their own identities. Why should they learn? They will not. Similarly, why should a child who wants to get into IAS from Bihar, from Patna, why should he learn Sanskrit? Why?
Yeah. I ask this question mainly for people, those in their homes, their regional languages are not spoken to them in general, like with they don't converse with their mom and dad in their regional languages, and because of that, the knowledge goes away, like fades away. So if such, instead of Sanskrit, if they are given the choice of learning their regional languages at school levels, it might help keep the language.
Yes. It's not just what was your name?
Muskan, sir.
It's not just a question of regional languages. Then it again comes to 22 languages of the 8th schedule.
Yeah.
It's not just the languages mentioned. I mean, there are hundreds of languages around. Each one of them rule governed. Now, people think they don't have script. You see, script has nothing to do with language. This is another thing people don't understand. Script has absolutely, nothing. Any language can be written. Devanagari is used for hundreds of languages.
Yeah.
Roman, in which English is written, is used for hundreds of languages. You can write the language in any script. So, and they don't have grammar. But that's for the question I just now asked, that all languages have grammars. Because without grammar, you can't have a language.
Yes.
So all the languages, this is the point to appreciate. All the languages are part of our fluidity. They are constitutive of our being, Multilinguality is constitutive of us. It is not something outside us. It constructs our mind. So we want to unfold that in a critical way and internalize and give the same respect to the other student and to the other teacher that we think is necessary.
Necessary, Thank you, sir.
Okay, so we have one question by 670960. I don't know. Please unmute yourself and ask the question. 670960. You've been raising your hand for long.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes, you're audible.
Hello.
You should give your name in addition
Sir,
to your
can I
number.
ask? Sorry, sir, that I forgot. My name is Zolan Munda. I am from West Bengal, Jalpaiguri district.
Okay.
Can I ask question in Hindi, sir?
Oh yes, of course. Yes. पूछिए.
मेरा ये क्वेश्चन और जिससे मैंने बहुत सारे लोगों को सफर करते देखा है, इसीलिए मैं एक क्वेश्चन पूछना चाहता हूँ.
अब आप ये लैंग्वेज देखिए कि मैं एक क्वेश्चन पूछना चाहता हूँ जिससे मैंने बहुत सारे लोगों को सफर करते देखा है.
मैं खुद सफर कर रहा हूँ सर.
But is it Hindi or is it English or is it a mixture? See, I'm trying to show how languages flow into each other. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah,
sir.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I have seen people suffering by this problem, and including me, I'm suffering by this problem. My question is, मैं जिस जगह में रहता हूँ, मैं वहाँ पे आदिवासी, मैं अपना लैंग्वेज बात करता हूँ. जब मैं थोड़ा बाहर जाता हूँ, तो majority of the people they are speaking in Bengali, and मैं पढ़ाई किया हूँ हिंदी मीडियम से. अभी मैं कॉलेज कर रहा हूँ. अभी मैं इंग्लिश में ही मेरा जो कॉलेज हो रहा है, जितना हिंदी मीडियम से होने के बाद में जब मैं कॉलेज में गया तो सडनली इट चेंज और अभी मुझे इंग्लिश पढ़ना पड़ रहा है. और जब मैं अभी हायर एजुकेशन के लिए जाऊंगा तो इंग्लिश मेरे लिए मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट हो जाएगा, क्योंकि जब मैं अगर हायर एजुकेशन मैं परस्यू करना चाहता हूँ तो मैं सोचता हूँ बड़े जैसे कि टीएस अजीम प्रेमजी, इन सब में मेरा जाने का टारगेट है, और जहाँ पे इंग्लिश बहुत ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट है जहाँ तक मुझे लगता है. तो मैं उतना इंग्लिश में अच्छा नहीं हूँ, लेकिन मैं जब हायर एजुकेशन में जाऊँगा तो इंग्लिश बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट हो जाएगा मेरे लिए. तो उन सिचुएशन में मैं किस टाइप अपने आप को स्ट्रेंथन करूँ, कैसे वहाँ पे जाके इंग्लिश मीडियम स्टूडेंट्स से वहाँ पे जो इंग्लिश में लेक्चरर हो रहा है वहाँ पे मैं अपने आप को कैसे कॉप अप करूँ सर?
अभी तक आप हिंदी और बांग्ला जानते हैं?
हाँ, बांग्ला थोड़ा
और
अपना लैंग्वेज
मतलब
जैसे कि मैं मुंडा हूँ, सादरी लैंग्वेज सर. जैसे कि
ये देखिए ना, लोग अपना लैंग्वेज बताने में भी हिचकिचाते हैं. ये हम लोगों का, this is what we have done to people. This is what we have done to our country, and we talk of multilingualism and three language formula. We have created a situation where somebody coming from the tribal area, speaking a perfectly rule-governed systematic language like Sadri, right, whose grammars have been written and which can be written, which has poetry, which has stories, am I right? It is full of literature, right? So, what was your name?
जोलन मुंडा.
हाँ, जोलन देखो भैया, आपको एक सवाल पूछना है अपने आप से. ये सवाल पूछना है कि आप सदरी, हिंदी और बांग्ला कैसे सीखे. ठीक है, आप उस सवाल को बार बार पूछेंगे अपने आप से कि क्या क्या हुआ उसमें, मेरे चारों तरफ कैसा माहौल था, मेरे दोस्त कैसे थे, मैं कैसी किताबें पढ़ता था. तो आपको खुद इस बात का जवाब मिल जाएगा कि जब आप मान लीजिए दिल्ली आते हैं या बॉम्बे जाते हैं टाटा इंस्टीट्यूट में, या हैदराबाद जाते हैं या बेंगलोर जाएंगे एपीयू में, यहीं जाएंगे ना पढ़ने के लिए. जब आप वहां जाएंगे तो आपके चारों तरफ अंग्रेजी बोलने वाले होंगे, किताबें अंग्रेजी की होंगी, पढ़ाने वाले अंग्रेजी के होंगे. थोड़ी देर आपको परेशानी होगी, लेकिन फिर आपके कई दोस्त बनेंगे जो हिंदी भी जानते हैं और अंग्रेजी भी जानते हैं. तो फिर आपकी हिंदी इंग्लिश शुरू हो जाएगी, और धीरे धीरे और आप में वो फैकल्टी है जो कि हम सब में है. तो आपको बिल्कुल चिंता नहीं करनी चाहिए, आप बिल्कुल अंग्रेजी सीख जाएंगे. ये मैंने आज आपको बोल दिया, और आप जिस दिन सीख जाएं तो मुझे जरूर बताना.
हाँ जी, जरूर सर. थैंक यू सो मच सर.
Okay, so I think we are on time, and I request that we should close it. I'm sorry for the people who could not ask their questions. So I hope that everyone had a great session. And
I think we could continue. We could continue if Professor Ramakant is free and others are willing to stay on. I think we could continue for some more
Yes,
time.
ma'am. We have certain questions. If sir agrees, we can go ahead with that.
Okay, I need to move around a bit. So, yeah, go ahead.
We have
Okay,
Aarti.
Yeah.
Sir, shall we continue? Ma'am is asking.
Yes, yes.
We have Aarti. Aarti, can you ask your question, ma'am? Aarti, ma'am.
या गुड इवनिंग सर.
हेलो.
नमस्ते सर. मैं हिंदी में भी बात करूंगी और आपसे जब आप हिंदी बात कर रहे हैं मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा. मैं ये पूछना चाह रही थी कि ये लिंग्विस्टिक करेंसी किसी किसी लैंग्वेज की इतनी हाई क्यों थी? हम ऐसा क्यों समझते हैं कि इंग्लिश बहुत अच्छा है, संस्कृत बहुत अच्छा है? जैसे अभी आप इनसे बात कर रहे थे तो हम लोग अपनी ट्राइबल और रीजनल लैंग्वेजेस को कहीं कुछ कम समझते हैं. वी थिंक दैट यू नो दे लैक इन समथिंग. And even as a teacher, honestly, in class, when I am teaching, I tend to use English, and even when I use Hindi, I feel a little guilty, if I may say so, because मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि you know I have to teach. I'm there to talk in English and to enhance their English language skills, and I must not be using another language. मुझे लगता है कि मैं शायद उस हिंदी का सहारा ले रही हूँ और उनको बैसाखी पकड़ा रही हूँ, तो मुझे भी कहीं कुछ वो लगता है. So sir, if you could just elaborate on that.
You see, there are linguistic stereotypes that they are not genetically transmitted. Okay. Linguistic stereotypes are socially transmitted. And, you know, people like me have spent 40, 50 years trying to show exactly that when it comes to language, then human beings stand together. You know, if there is democracy anywhere in the world, it is in the world of language. If there is, you know, absolute equality, it is in the world of language. So, but it takes a while, given that there is a kind of dominating multilinguality, and there is a kind of dominated, and that is purely socio-economic and political. Okay, it is highly socially stratified. So it depends, you know, what social strata you belong to. Languages of that social strata will get privileged and will be reflected in the national education policy. Okay. Other languages, I mean, can you believe it that in the Constituent Assembly debates, there was only one person fighting. There was nobody talking about the languages of the Northeast. There was only one person by the name of Jaipal Singh who was fighting and saying, what about the tribal languages? What about Munna? What about Bodo? What about Santali? Nobody listened to him, including Ambedkar. You know, nobody listened to him. It is not recorded anywhere. Bodo and Santali and Meitei are part of the 8th schedule now. They were not there earlier. Right? So, I mean, you just have to understand this, and if I were you, I'll use more and more Hindi rather than less and less. And I would see, जो हिंदी बोलने वाले लोग हैं उनको मैं उतनी इज्जत और प्यार से देखूंगा जितना कि मैं अंग्रेजी वालों. एटलीस्ट समवेयर यू हैव टू मेक अ बिगिनिंग, राइट? अब आपकी क्लास में कोई हिंदी में जवाब देता है और आप थोड़ा बहुत हिंदी समझती हैं, या आप उसकी हिंदी का अनुवाद करवा सकती हैं. अगर आप मान लीजिए इंग्लैंड से आई हैं या अमेरिका से आई हैं, आपको हिंदी नहीं आती, तो मुझे लगता है कि इतना स्पेस तो हमको रखना चाहिए, इतनी समझदारी तो रखनी चाहिए कि उस विद्यार्थी को अपनी बात कहने की जगह मिले.
सर, हम अगर ऐसी सोच रखते भी हैं तो हमारे आसपास के लोग ऐसी सोच नहीं रखते हैं. कई दफे मुझे ये कमेंट भी दिया गया है कि Aarti speaks a lot in Hindi during her classes. ऐसा comment भी दिया जाता है कि ये हिंदी में बात करती है because students all over India आते हैं वहाँ पर.
You should feel flattered. Really. You see, we have to make a start somewhere. And then it will spread like wildfire. But let us not forget that I completely agree with you that at the end of the day, it's a question of power structures. Right? The greater the amount of, I mean, look at this, I quoted from the beginning, all citizens, our constitution says all citizens, and all citizens have languages, but the languages of all citizens don't have the same equality. And this policy, like all other policies, further, you see, it's only Kothari Commission. If you read Kothari Commission report, there is no rhetoric there like this, as you find in NEP. If you read the objectives of early childhood education in NEP, then you will say, what will the child learn after this? Because he has learned everything now by the age of 5 years. What will she do after this? So, there is a lot of rhetoric there. But there is no social metrics. There is no question of equality there. There is a question of inclusion. We never think that, who are we to include here? What do we mean when we say inclusion? Huh? We are superior here and we want to include somebody. Huh? I think this is not on. At all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. अब मैं हिंदी use करूँगी.
बिल्कुल करो.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Rishi Raj Rai. In your view, what is the exact process that transforms the child utterances into grammatically correct speech?
Sorry?
So the question is, what is the exact process that transforms the child utterances into grammatically correct speech?
No, I'll need to understand what is grammatically correct.
Rishi Raj, if you want to unmute yourself and clarify.
Hello, sir. Good to see you, sir. Such a long time.
ये ऋषि राज क्या ये उदयपुर वाला है?
जी सर.
अरे यार छोड़ो, तुमसे मैं बाद में बात कर लूँ.
जी सर.
करेक्टनेस की चिंता हो रही है.
यस सर.
विद्या भवन में रहने के बाद तुम्हें करेक्टनेस की चिंता हो रही है?
नहीं सर.
Next we have Madhushree.
Rishi, I think, here is an assignment for you.
Yes, sir.
Find me a child or find me a student, 5-year or 6-year-old student, who speaks an incorrect sentence in her language. Okay.
Can't find, sir.
Huh?
We won't be able to find, sir.
Okay. Then you shouldn't ask me that question. What you are saying is that I should learn your correct language. Okay. Because it is the language of power, I will learn it, but it will take time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Can we have the last, getting exhausted, terribly exhausted.
NEP 2020 in a way demands for perfectly trained teacher. Isn't it utopian? That's Madhushree.
Sorry?
NEP 2020 in a way demands for perfectly trained teachers. Isn't it utopian?
Isn't it utopian? Yeah, I wish it were utopian in the Platonic sense, but I think it is, I don't know in what sense. I mean, because it's not a, yeah, well, I don't know what to say. I think it is not a coherent document. I don't think it makes, it only, prepares the ground for, more and more commercialization and commodification corporatization of education. I think that's what it is doing.
Okay.
Close now. Sorry.
We'll close now. Yes, ma'am. I hope that everyone had a great session. I was going to end before time, but yes, it extended. Thank you for letting us do, sir. And I thank our honored speaker, Dr. Ramakant Agnihotri, for taking out the time for us and giving us with such enriching information. I also thank our professors from TISS for providing us with this opportunity. I extend my gratitude to the technical staff and my fellow volunteers for making this session a success. Lastly, I thank our audience for being patient and being active participants with us in this session. I hope we see and meet more people in coming sessions as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
I'm leaving. Huh? Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Close the session for all now. Thank you.